Hello, my name is Jackson McMurray, and you might know me from the No Nerds Allowed podcast that I do with my sister right here on this channel. It's on this channel right here. The channel's called No Nerds Allowed. Channel's named after the podcast. Since we're planning on doing that podcast only every other week, I figured I ought to start working on a project that I could upload in the off weeks. So this is something I came up with that I'm calling A Study in Marvel. In this series, I'm going to be watching and reviewing every big screen Marvel adaptation that's ever been made, one by one, even the shitty ones. And speaking of shitty ones, check out this movie, Howard the Duck. Yes, that's absolutely right. If you're only counting big screen feature film adaptations of Marvel Comics, this is the first Marvel movie ever made. Produced by George Lucas and written by the team that brought us American Graffiti and the most racist Indiana Jones,
Chilled monkey brain.
Howard the Duck was originally written to be an animated movie, until George Lucas didn't make enough movies to fulfill his contract with Universal Studios. So, as a result, he had to make sure that this movie was produced as a live-action movie with a real little person in a real duck suit and a real human woman who would have to pretend to have sex with that guy in the duck suit on camera. Because George Lucas is the world's worst filmmaker. I also don't have a microphone stand, just a heads up. That's why I'm holding this microphone like this. I know it's weird, but it is just the way it's got to be for this video. It makes me feel like an old-timey announcer. And weighing in at 150 pounds, it's Howard the Duck. He'll kick your ass. The mallard of mystery. The duck will fuck you up. This has been my adaptation of what it would be like if Howard the Duck were a professional wrestler. Thank you. Alright, so who's Howard the Duck anyway? Before I really looked into it, I always sort of assumed that he was one of the goofy Timely Comics characters from the 40s that got absorbed into the Marvel continuity when they became Marvel Comics. But that's actually not the case at all. Howard the Duck wasn't invented until 1973. Howard the Duck's first appearance was in a series called Adventure into Fear, written by Steve Gerber and drawn by Val Mayerick. And he was actually only a secondary character in that series. The main character is actually a barbarian named Korek, who stumbles upon Man-Thing's nexus of all realities and gets stranded on our Earth. Which, if you're not familiar with Marvel Comics stuff, that's just absolute gibberish, what I just said to you, and that's okay, you don't need to know that right now. Anyway, Howard the Duck was just another character who also got sucked through the nexus of all realities and became stranded on our Earth, except he's a duck, and he's from a planet of duck people, and he thinks we're the weird ones, go figure. Anyway, Howard was popular enough in that story that he eventually got his own solo series. The very first issue of this story opens with Howard the Duck on the bank of a river, contemplating suicide after serving jail time in Adventure into Fear. So that's the kind of story we're getting into with this. This isn't just goofy slapstick Looney Tunes stuff. This is something a lot weirder and more existentially frightening. This is a pretty old comic, but as I was reading it, I couldn't help be impressed at how well it holds up. It's a really competently told Douglas Adams-esque existential sci-fi satire. And I also really appreciate the art by a guy named Frank Brunner, even if it is a little bit systemic over-sexualization of women in comics-y. Anyway, don't ask me what happened between then and now, because if you ask me, the first good comic book was written in 2008, but that's neither here nor there. One of my favorite runs is a series written a couple of years ago by one of my favorite comic book writers, Chip Zdarsky, which features Howard the Duck opening a private detective agency and wearing a dapper little tan suit, and it's very wonderful. It's a very good comic series. I highly recommend it. Anyway, in adapting this character for the big screen, it's pretty clear that the writers would have had to make a few compromises here and there, and that's what ended up happening. They fucked up this script so bad that 30 years later, there's now a cited line on Wikipedia that says that a greater emphasis was placed on special effects than satire and storytelling. Like, it's just a scholastic fact now that this movie sucks. They've got a cited reference that says, hey, this is where we learned that for sure this movie sucked ass. So let's start watching this movie. The movie opens with what I think is genuinely the best scene. We open on the New York cityscape, and everything seems to be normal except for the fact that there are two moons in the sky. We move into a completely regular-looking apartment, and we see pictures of Howard's girlfriend on the table, revealing to us for the first time that we're looking at a planet of ducks. We see Howard's past laid out on his walls, his failed dream of being a musician, his years learning quack fu. Quack fu is a whole thing in this movie.
No one laughs at a master of quack fu.
There's even some character bits on the walls that aren't fully explored in the story of the movie, like a bowling trophy and a picture of him planting trees. We're shown movie posters with ducks instead of people, and it establishes really clearly that this world is just like our world, except that there's ducks on it instead of people. Plus, it's also followed up by what is maybe the only genuinely funny joke in this whole movie, where Howard sits down and watches some TV.
Oh, Fred, I love you so much. It hurts. Why can't society see?
$79.95. Forget it. $49.99. No way. I'm crazy, Webby, and my prices are insane.
The sequence wordlessly tells us everything that we need to know about Howard the Duck and the world that he's from, and does so in like less than 60 seconds. I think it's a hugely competent and efficient piece of storytelling. It really, really works. And then Howard sits down on a chair and cracks open a Play Duck magazine.
My little airbrushed beauty.
This movie, I hate this movie so much. For reasons totally unknown to the audience, Howard is picked up and thrust out of his world. He's shot into space and careens towards Earth. And also, we're gonna ignore this duck taking a bath. And we're also gonna ignore that black duck scatting and carrying a boombox. And I don't feel qualified to totally unpack the implications of that. Okay, you know what? We're not going to ignore the naked duck. I can't ignore it. I don't understand what this is. I'm gonna show you this clip completely unedited. This is what happens in the movie. This is the real 3-second sequence in this film.
I'm such a lucky girl in love.
What is that? There's no joke here. Why is she there? Why doesn't she react when Howard busts through the wall? Why is she singing? Who is she in love with? Why were we shown this in the movie? That's not a joke. There's no joke in that. They just wanted to show us this. That's something that you learn pretty quickly while watching this movie, is that it's extremely horny. It's a very horny movie. Right in the opening sequence of this movie, it wastes no time showing us not one, but two separate, discrete, topless duck women. Then as Howard gets beamed off of the planet, he passes a couple making out in an elevator, and eventually crash lands in Cleveland, Ohio, where he stumbles upon Leah Thompson being sexually assaulted by two men, one of which has baby doll faces sewn to his leather jacket. What's the deal with that? Also, why were people so afraid of punk rock street youths in the 80s?
Fuck you, asshole.
Anyway, he spends the night at Leah Thompson's house, and in the morning he decides he needs to get a job, so he has a conversation with right-wing rhetoric McRacial stereotype.
You think that by looking controversial, you're never gonna find a job and just go on collecting unemployment and living happy on the public dole. Well, dude, you got another thing coming.
And after literally trying to bite her ass, she gets him a job at what I can only describe as a hot tub parlor, which I guess is just a place that rents out hot tubs for people to fuck in. I don't know if that's a real thing or not. I've never experienced that type of thing in my life before. Maybe I just need to get out more, but I'm not familiar with this type of establishment. Anyway, he's eventually asked to clean this pool. And just by the way, if anybody knows the sex act that would result in a pool looking like this, could you let me know? Because this movie's starting to make me think that maybe I don't actually know what sex is. But anyway, that's the last straw. He quits and shoves his boss into that pool.
Guess I slipped. Just came by to tell you. I quit!
Afterwards, he decides to unwind by going to see Leah Thompson's band play in a bar, and kicks the shit out of a third sexual predator in the first half hour of this movie, and only then goes home to be sexually preyed upon by Leah Thompson. The only thing that I'd ever heard anybody say about this movie before I watched it for myself was that Leah Thompson tries to have sex with Howard the Duck. And when I started making this video, I told myself, I'm not going to harp on that because, everybody's already talked about that so much. That's like the only thing anybody knows about this movie. And I don't want to beat a dead horse, and there's gotta be better things to talk about in this movie than that scene. There are not. This scene is really and truly horrifying and baffling and completely unnecessary and just generally one of the most atrocious pieces of filmmaking I've ever seen in my life. Here's how the scene goes. Leah Thompson is getting ready for bed, and since this is an 80s movie, that means putting on lingerie. She gets into bed lamenting about how she just can't find the right man.
Just can't seem to find the right man.
So Howard takes this opportunity to crawl into bed with her and is like, hey baby, you want to have sex?
Maybe it's not a man you should be looking for.
To which Leah Thompson replies, yes, I would love to. I would love to have sex with you, a duck.
Okay. Let's go for it, Mr. Macho.
At which point Howard gets all scared. He's like, oh, no, I didn't really want to have sex with you. That was a total joke.
What do you mean? Okay, it was a joke. Listen, I'm pretty tired.
It's just that you're so incredibly soft and cuddly.
But regardless, Leah Thompson is like, no, I'm super into it now. Now I super want to have sex with you. And he's like, no, I super don't. And he's like quivering with fear and pulling the blanket up over his head. And but then Leah Thompson just keeps rolling with it. She's like, no, I super want to have sex with you, Howard the Duck.
I just can't resist your intense animal magnetism.
And she just like keeps trying to seduce this like obviously non-consenting alien duck until she finally gives up and is like, no, it's okay, Howard. I was just kidding too. But then she still kisses him anyway.
Come on, Howard. I was just kidding. Good night.
And I don't know. It just goes to show you that in this movie, if you're a man trying to pressure women into sex, then you get the shit kicked out of you by an anthropomorphic talking duck. But if you're a woman doing it to a man who is an anthropomorphic talking duck, it's played for comedy? I don't think this is played for comedy now that I say it out loud. I don't know what this scene is. Who is this scene for? I don't know if I'm supposed to think this is funny or like just be aroused. I think at the end of the day, this is just a sex scene for the benefit of the world's weirdest perverts. I've been thinking about this scene for so long, and I truly cannot fathom what was going on when they wrote it. And presumably, off the heels of Back to the Future, Leah Thompson is this sex symbol, and they wanted a good excuse to, like, have her be sexy in the movie, which I understand on a certain level. But there are a lot of ways to do that don't involve her molesting an alien. So, like, here's one right off the top of my head. She's getting ready for bed. She's getting into her sexy pajamas. She's being shot at very flattering angles, and it's very clear to the moviegoer that this is a very sexually charged sequence. But then we can cut right to Howard the Duck being like, eh. Because he's a duck, and he doesn't like people. He likes ducks. Because it's clear that Leah Thompson is very hot, but Howard is a duck, and he likes ducks and not people. And that'd be funny. That'd be a good joke. I don't know. Is that still gross? Probably. But is it less gross than what happened in this movie? Definitely. It's definitely less gross than what actually happened in this movie. The best I can figure was they wanted to, like, dispel some imagined sexual tension between the two characters. So they had to envision a scene wherein both characters verbally say that they don't want to have sex with each other. Like, as if they don't explicitly acknowledge that they don't want to be together, everyone's just going to be confused about the fact that they don't fuck at the end of the movie. But the reality is that one of them is a person and the other one is a duck, so it's actually super normal that they don't get together at the end of the movie. What the hell are you thinking? But I don't know, I still don't understand, because later in the movie there's a bit where a whole bunch of regular-ass diner patrons are trying to eat Howard for absolutely no reason, and Leah Thompson's just like, hey, he's my boyfriend! Presumably to get them to stop doing that, but then they still keep trying to eat him anyway, so I don't know what the whole point of that was.
Duck in heaven, is this the end of Howard?
Oh, there's gonna be more violence! I hate violence! You gotta go in there and beat him up!
And I don't know, just to put this in context, this movie somehow has more female screenwriters than Mad Max Fury Road does. I sincerely hate this movie, and I had to watch it like 3 times to make this dumb video. So believe me when I say that all the good stuff happens in like the first 45 minutes. The rest of it is just so simultaneously boring and cringe-inducing that it's not even fun to talk about. They go and talk to Tim Robbins, and he says he has some scientist friends. So they go talk to his scientist friends, and they have a machine that'll beam Howard back to his home planet. But then Jeffrey Jones gets possessed by an evil alien, and some hijinks ensue.
Soon the Dark Overlords will engulf the Earth. Nothing human will remain here.
Yeah? Well, nothing duck's remaining here either.
And there's a bit where they get in a chase with a hang glider, which is kind of fun, I guess. And credit where credit is due. The big action set piece at the end is a big stop-motion alien that actually looks really good. Like, considering this movie was made in 1986, that's an impressive giant alien. But anyway, then at the end of the movie, Howard decides to stay on Earth for absolutely no reason. And then Leah Thompson's band plays a song about how much they love Howard the Duck. And he plays the world's worst guitar solo as the credits roll. So yeah, the movie's not good. I genuinely, I love bad movies. I'm great at finding ironic. I'm not good at finding erotic enjoyment out of things. I'm good at finding ironic enjoyment in bad movies. I love Spider-Man 3. Spider-Man 3 is one of my all-time favorites. This movie sucks, though. I cannot stress enough how much this movie is absolutely not worth your time. Frankly, it's just embarrassing to watch. So anyway, that's it. I'm done. I can't talk about this movie anymore. I'm done with it. I'm moving on. I'm never watching this movie ever again in my life. I bought this movie on Blu-ray to make this video, and it's like it's a cursed object. Like, I hate having it in my house. It projects a bad aura on my whole dwelling. I don't have much in terms of a wrap-up for this. Besides just for me to continue to implore you to watch go live your life. There are so many better things you can be doing with your time than watching this movie. You could watch a better movie. You could watch 2 episodes of a very good TV show. You could drive to Seattle. You could take the time you would have used to watch this movie and you can just be somewhere else. You can go somewhere and do something, you know? Hey, while I was editing this video, news just dropped that Kevin Smith is going to be producing an animated Howard the Duck TV show for Hulu in the next couple of years, which I'm actually very excited about. I think it's about time we got another... it's about time that somebody took another crack at Howard the Duck after this movie being the only thing anybody knew about him for the last 30 years. I think it'll be really exciting to see somebody who actually cares a lot about comic books and about the characters they're adapting to take a crack at him. I'm excited about it. I think it'll turn out well. I just felt like that news was too much of a bombshell to not put in this video I'm making about Howard the Duck. So that's all. I'm done for real now. But the good news, it can only go uphill from here. The next movie on the list is Blade. Technically, there was a Captain America and a Punisher movie that happened in between Howard the Duck and Blade, but I'm only counting things that came out in American theaters. So next on the list is Blade with Wesley Snipes. I've never seen it. I'm actually pretty excited to watch it. I just ordered it on Amazon. So I'll see you next week in the podcast, and I'll see you the week after that with a review of Blade. That's all. I'll see you next time.